it's quite fascinating to me that you are where you are with this when it comes to religion, because it's how did you? So can you talk me through that? What was your upbringing with Christianity, and how did you get into it, and how did you get in so deep?
Yeah.
I guess it was providing you meaning, right? Obviously, deep meaning at the time.
Yeah, it was. And it's the same. Let me say this, because I've probably upset some people already. So let me just set a understanding for you. I don't believe Christianity to be wrong. I do believe it to be narrow. So within the narrowness of Christianity, yes, it provided me some really good things. It provided my wife and I some really good things, some really good connection when we moved countries, some community, some understanding and such. We definitely grew closer to a divine being or God, or however you understand that. I definitely found purpose through it. And yes, I was deeply, deeply involved. How did I get drawn to it initially? I was raised with a Christian mom.
So there wasn't a lot of choice from your
I don't think
side
there
of things.
was. Yeah, and I don't think she had a lot of choice. And I actually think that most leaders in Christian churches right now, pastors and such, also don't have a lot of choice. I think there's a very strong conditioning that has happened. When I look through the history of the Christian church, East and West, when it split in the 1600s in Europe, and what transpired in terms of who took what in that kind of divorce, and all the mystical side of God stayed in the East, and all the structural methodology came to the West. And we see, I believe it was Constantine implementing that in order to control population groups, because religion was such a fundamentally strong force to do that with. And then we see it water down into Western culture and be dominated by consumerism and by comfort and things, which were never the original understandings of the faith. And you start to pull on that thread a little bit of how much it's changed, and what we believe versus what originally was probably true, and how much of it we just don't know because we don't have context for it. And I can go on and on and on about how it fits into the massive landscape of human history of 22,000 years, and yet we only believe a book that's been reliable for maybe 1,000, maybe 1,200. We just consider all of these elements, then you start to recognize the conditioning behind it. And when you grow up in a Christian country as a Western white person, and you have a Christian family, then that is what you do, because that moral bias is everything. It's everything that you are in your identity connected to that family. Now, I get that not everybody goes that way. Some people rebel. And you know what? I used to frown on them, and now I'm like, wow, good on you, mate. Like, well done. I mean, free thinking at that age is pretty amazing, But I just, it became, I guess, the first safe space for me. And using the talents that I felt that I had and that I developed through speaking and through being able to think and unravel thought and things, I just went full tilt and became very, very good at propagating that message. But when I look back, I can see the conditioning all the way through.
Okay.
I can see what you're sometimes directly told, sometimes just implied, what you're allowed to listen to, what you should watch, what you shouldn't watch. I never listened to any hard rock growing up because it was from the devil.
Right.
I didn't listen to Chris Cornell, for example. And now I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, this is one of the greatest musicians,
man.
For what reason, So things like that. And you start recognizing all the time that you spent in meetings because you were, in a very real sense, guilted into being there. How your identity tied into what you were doing in a sermon on a Sunday, there's a lot of it. And I'm still going through a lot of the process. I think, 37 years is a long time. So
how old are you now?
I'm 45 now. And so it's a long time and it's a lifetime. And I think one of the things that happened when I started realizing that this was too narrow and there's more to the divine and more to life and more to spirituality and more to the convergence of the spiritual and physical realm in our human beings than just mere Western Christianity. And I started to process that. I actually went to my pastor, who was a friend of mine as well, and I'd been preaching in their church and such, and another friend, and I had them for lunch, and I said to them, I'm going to step out of church for a while. I mean, being a theologian, and I had always for over a decade, I had preached that the church would face this time of reformation. If they didn't embrace change inside the walls, it would happen externally. And that's exactly what's happening now. The world is coming to a higher consciousness, and the church is being left behind, becoming stagnant. Although many are leaving church as well. The stats are actually incredible. But when I came to that point, I met with them. I said, come on this journey with me. I want to discover these things that I've been told. And I don't feel I can do that while I'm sitting on a Sunday with the different rhetorics coming a different way. And the way my brain works is really tiring. So I'm going to take a few months. I'm going to look at this, and I'd love to stay in touch. Dude, like the level of disconnect that happens when you leave a church, and I hadn't even left yet, is astounding. This is a foundational premise that is absolute, that you need to be saved in order to enter heaven. And it is absolute that if you are not, as Christian language would go, walking with the Lord, then you have backslidden. And then it gets into some tricky water. Some people will say, well, now you're not going to heaven anymore. Some people will say heaven is forever, no matter how lost you are. And they'll go to parables and all these things. And I know if you're listening to this, I know you pull out the lost son and all of that stuff. And that's fine. The context of the Bible is something we can discuss in another breath. But when I came to that point and realized, oh, wow, people are easily separating, not checking up on me, and yet they believe this is something dire to my soul. What's going on here? Do we not believe this? Do we not have real, authentic community that we feel we can reach out to somebody and just ask them, hey, why? What are you learning? Like, I'm a theologian, mate. I've preached around the world. I've done my time, and yet nobody reaches out and go, as a theologian who has planted churches, ministered all over, been in all these scenarios, what are you seeing that we're not seeing? There was none of that. And that then starts opening.
But these are questions that they don't, that it seems as though you are asking questions that are dangerous, that do not want the answers. They do not want to hear the answers, because these are.
And so we must ask ourselves who they're dangerous to and why, and what is keeping that control mechanism from people living freely and discovering their own thoughts. Surely if God is big enough, you're not going to get lost just like that, and loving enough. So when I then decided to actually formally leave the church, I had about 3 or 4 months of what can only be described as mourning. And I ended up mourning because I'm coming to this realization of these control mechanisms, but also dealing with the goodness that it gave in my life over that period.
Yeah.
But then realizing how much incorrect stuff I had preached and taught and guided people in over meals and things, and they'd listened to me. And look, my heart was, first you're like, oh, I'm a terrible person. And then you have to realize, okay, my heart was actually good in it. I did have their best interest at heart, and I was going with the very best that I knew to help them. And it did help people in their lives and such. But the overall paradigm, you really do sit there as a leader going, whoa, how much responsibility do I bear for that? And the more you unpack it, you can only come to the conclusion that you yourself were blindfolded, and you yourself were conditioned into things. And you are complicit, yes, but you're also ignorant in it.
The true ignorance is not as much of a derogatory term as I think it is used as. It is blindness.
No, sure, it's blindness.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so, when you start unraveling it, you start seeing it. You can't not see it. You can't not see the control mechanism. You can't see why. You can't unsee why people are disgruntled with church, with these methodologies, because when I speak to, because when I speak to friends who want to speak to me about this, it's like,
do you have many from the church that want to speak to you about it?
No, not many. And I do have a few, like 2 or 3, and they're deep relationships that I had, and actually they're all from Australia.
Wow.
Yeah. And I think part of it because we had a smaller church of like 30 or 40 people, and so there was a closer connection. And these people are not connecting with me because of church. We are friends. We are deep friends.
And it comes up.
It's different, yes. And so one of the things that I'll often say to them is, all of those years in Western Christianity, all of those years where I was left wondering, why is God not doing this for me? Why is he not opening that door? Why is he not protecting me from this? Why am I sick? Why am I this? Why am I that? Trying to figure out if you're in your purpose, trying to figure out if you have sinned, why you can't get yourself to, and now I'm speaking to Christians really, why you can't get yourself to spend that 1 hour devotional time every day. All of these things, all of the struggles, the stress, the anxiety, the loneliness, the depression that you still have as a Christian, and nobody can give you an answer for other than, I'll pray for you, my brother. And yet all of those things, since I've left Christianity and started discovering the power of being present and what consciousness really means and what Jesus was actually trying to show us in terms of being in a human experience, fully connected to the divine, but operating in a human realm. All of these things, I just have so much more headspace, not trying to figure out who and where and why and how God is. And just understanding that I can live in the mystical side of not knowing what this immense divine being is exactly like, and just enjoy being human and enjoy being spiritual and enjoy being free, and know that if I do believe in the divine being that I think we should, considering our intricacies and our beautiful emotions and this incredible design that we carry, then certainly that God is a lot more accessible to me than through a narrow paradigm of, frankly, a model that has only been around for 800 years, 900 years. And we're looking at a history of 22,000 years of proven human organized civilization.